I think so.
You get in the middle, I'm getting the end, he's getting an end.
I'm not getting the middle.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll allow me a brief introduction. Of course, again, our moderator tonight is Dr. Jeff Engel from the Center of Presidential Studies here at SMU. And now for our Medal of Honor recipients. Immediately to my left, Lieutenant Tommy Norris joined the Navy in 1967 and soon entered into SEAL training. In April 1972, Lieutenant Norris was one of few remaining SEALs in Vietnam. When Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton was shot down behind enemy lines, aerial combat search and rescue operations failed, leading to the loss of 5 additional aircraft and the death of 11 or more airmen, 2 captured and 3 more down and needing rescue. Lieutenant Norris was tasked with mounting a ground operation to recover Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton, First Lieutenant Clark, and First Lieutenant Walker from behind enemy lines. Assisted by Vietnamese Sea Commando forces, he and Vietnamese Petty Officer Nguyen Van Kiet went more than 1.2 miles behind enemy lines and successfully rescued 2 of the downed American aviators. This story would later be told in movie Bat 21. His actions that day earned him our nation's greatest respect and the U.S. military's highest decoration, the Medal of Honor. Our second Medal of Honor recipient, Specialist Clarence Sasser, a Texas native, was drafted into the Army after giving up his college deferment at the University of Houston. He served as a combat medic during the Vietnam War. On 10 January 1968, his company was making an assault in Dien Thuong Province, Republic of Vietnam, when suddenly it was taken under heavy small arms recoilless rifle, machine gun, and rocket fire from well-fortified enemy positions on 3 sides of the landing zone. During the first few minutes, over 30 casualties were sustained. Despite being wounded several times, Specialist Sasser rendered aid to multiple wounded soldiers, continually exposing himself to enemy fire while refusing medical attention for his own wounds. For his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, Specialist Sasser would receive our nation's greatest respect and the U.S. military highest decoration, the Medal of Honor. Our third Medal of Honor recipient is Lieutenant Mike Thornton, who enlisted in the United States Navy in 1967. He would eventually enter into SEAL training, where upon graduation was assigned to SEAL Team 1. On October 31st, 1972, then Petty Officer Thornton participated in a mission to capture prisoners and gather intelligence from near the coast of Quang Tri Province, just south of the demilitarized zone. During the operation, his patrol suddenly came under heavy fire from a numerically superior force. Upon learning that his lieutenant had been hit by enemy fire and was believed to be dead, he returned through a hail of fire to the lieutenant's last position, quickly disposed of 2 enemy soldiers about to overrun the position, and it succeeded in removing the seriously wounded and unconscious lieutenant to the water's edge. He then towed his lieutenant seaward for approximately 2 hours until picked up by support craft. Lieutenant Thornton, then Petty Officer Thornton, was directly responsible for saving Lieutenant Norris's life. Yes, Lieutenant Norris right here, and enabling the safe extraction of all patrol members. It's the only time in Medal of Honor history that a Medal of Honor recipient saved another Medal of Honor recipient's life. His action that day earned him the nation's greatest respect and the U.S. military's highest decoration, the Medal of Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, our guests.
Thank you, General. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. I have to say there are few occasions in my life where I appreciate being on the stage and having the shortest introduction, but this is certainly the most appropriate moment for that. So what we'd like to do for the next few moments is to give these gentlemen the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about their experience and, more importantly, I think their perspective on the war, especially as our nation is reconsidering this conflict again, obviously in light of the new film by Ken Burns. So I want to start with this question and put the context out, which is that when we think of Vietnam in our country, I think we actually think of it and remember it differently than other conflicts. And the best way to think about this is if you go to the Vietnam Memorial you see a series of names. We think of the war in many ways as individual stories. There's no other war that we have a national monument to that lists individuals on it the way that we do for Vietnam. So in that context, I'd really appreciate just starting with you, Lieutenant, and tell us how you found yourself there. What is the story that brought you to Vietnam, your individual story?
Well, first of all, I was asked by my country, my nation, and you know, none of us went to war for accolades or awards. We went there because our nation asked us to go to arms. You know, we live in the greatest nation in the world, and a lot of people take it for granted. But, you know, for us to continue the freedoms that we enjoy so much in this great nation, we have to be able to support our nation as one. And so when they asked, of course, my family was all in the military, and when they asked, I knew I was going, but I always knew I wanted to be a Navy frogman. And so I didn't hesitate to go at all as soon as I was asked. Do I agree everything about Vietnam? No, I don't. I do say this about the media. A lot of stuff that I was getting sent from my parents to me was nothing that I was seeing. A lot of good things went over there. A lot of bad things went over there. War is a terrible, terrible thing. There's nothing good about it. If it was, I think we'd be in the war all the time. But the problem is that we have to, I've been to 78 countries in my life, and I feel that we could all live in freedom. But there's such individuals in this world that's not allowed us to live in freedom. So I continue to help support our nation and what we do to keep our nation free for our children.
Sir?
As was mentioned, I was attending college, and coming from a poor rural farm family, there wasn't any choice but to sometimes pick up work. In that era, to continue or receive a deferment, you had to be pretty much full-time. Well, full-time and working didn't too much mesh at that point. The law of the land was that if you didn't meet that criteria, then you were subject to be drafted. As I say, it was the law of the land, so I was drafted. I believe then, I believe now, that if you're going to enjoy the benefits of a situation, then you got to contribute to that situation. And that's what I did. I reported. I went to basic training, was sent to medical aid man training, and from there to Vietnam. Was the law of the land. And from that point, I did what I call my duty. My duty was to be an aid man. We like to call ourselves combat medics. I'm sure there's some out there. But from that point, that was my job. My job was to take care of my guys. And I like to think that that's what I did.
Do you still recall your draft number?
Well, that was before draft numbers. You know. I think you're referring to a little bit later on when they got a draft number, and that determined your position in the draft. Well, then you were put in a category called 1A, 1 Alpha, which meant you were...
You're gone.
And once you got in that situation, that category, you were gone. You know, and I won't dare sit here and say that I didn't know that. I knew that, and I didn't really have any objections with it. Again, I say I came from a poor rural farm family, and almost anything had to be better than that. You know, if you'll understand what the middle 60s was about, almost anything was better than that. On top of it, there were promises made. There was the GI Bill, maybe on to further my education. Just one thing that we always sort of felt over there was that you shook the dice and you rolled them. What you got is what you got.
Lieutenant?
I grew up in a middle-class family. My father served during World War II, and he instilled in me the belief that the respect for this country and for what it's given us. I fully expected to serve my time in the military when that time came. And I also believe that, that everyone should give back to this country something for what it's given us. So my time came. I graduated from college at that time. We had the draft, and depending on what your draft board, how many people they had to get once you'd finish college. I mean, the 1A going to come up. So I volunteered as well. When I deployed because I was sent to do a job my country sent me to do, and I did that job to the best of my ability. You see an awful lot of things in combat. Like Mike said, war is not good. It's terrible. But we will continue to see wars because somebody always wants what somebody else has, and unfortunately, we need to address that. And although war is not something that you ever want to have to become involved in, it's sometimes necessary for us to keep what we hold so dear. And I will never regret for the time I spent serving my country. I did the job I was sent to do, and I truly am thankful for those young men and women that serve us today. They're the ones that are keeping us free. We fought at a time where, yes, we did back-to-back tours, but we didn't do them for 16 years like they're doing now. But thankfully, they're still out there. Small percentage of this country still volunteers and is out there willing to keep us free. And God bless them. God bless this great country.
So when I first met these gentlemen this evening, and I asked and told them that I was going to give them the opportunity to tell their story, their response was collectively, this is not our first rodeo. You know, we've done this before. But I found myself wondering, as you hear the citations listed and read aloud, something you've heard, I can't even imagine how many times you've heard that now. What do you think of as you hear the citation, but also what isn't in the citation? What memories do you have that don't make it into that official record that you think people should be aware of?
Well, my citation was 18 pages long, and it was approximately a paragraph. But at the end of the war, I've had several tours of Vietnam, and so this wasn't my first tour over there, as Tommy had several tours over there too. I do want to say something really quick before I forget. I want to say thanks to all our Vietnam veterans. I'm so proud of each and every one of you, and I hold you in a very special place, and I say welcome home, my brothers. And you know, because what went on with us and the way we were treated, we can't change the damn past, but we sure can make the future better for these kids. It is through your leadership and what you've done for this great nation and worked hard, as Clarence was talking about and Tommy's talking about, that we can hold our heads up high for what we did. As far as I'm concerned, could we have won the war? Yes, I felt we could have. If they hadn't tied our hands. Our hands were tied completely over there. I'd go to places operate, as Tommy did, up north. They wouldn't clear the AOs for us. You know, we couldn't bomb Ho Chi Minh Trail. I mean, I knew Admiral Stockdale, Colonel Bud Day, many pilots. they couldn't bomb targets that they knew that were, you know, that they could knock out, but they were told no, they couldn't do it. So, you know, when you get your hands tied, you know, during our engagements, every time I went over there, our rules of engagements changed every damn time. If you see a gun, you can shoot the guy. If you see this guy, well, you first asked, well, are you a bad guy? Well, hell, he's carrying a gun. You know, he ain't a bad guy. Next time he had to shoot at you, well, I got bad news. I ain't gonna let anybody shoot at me first, because he may hit me, so I'm gonna shoot him first. But you know, it's just, are we on our side, or are we on their side? And that's what I always couldn't understand. And I hate to say this, we haven't learned anything through our history books. Let's go back when we were the War Department during World War II. Let's look at our history books from back there. Let's look at the bombings. Was there bad things on the north side and the south side? Yes, there were. Do I like throwing it up on the TV set in front of us? You know, we have Tommy and I just did a thing in Half Moon Bay. We had 103 young Navy SEALs up on the wall at Half Moon Bay at the Ritz-Carlton that we go down in honor of their families and the Gold Star families. You know, there's nothing good about war at all. But ladies and gentlemen, as Tommy just said, it's never going to go away. We better get smart about it and learn how to defeat it, because being passive is not the way to do it. If you're going to go in to take on a country, you better take it on with your attack. You better be very aggressive. You better not be passive and think it's going to go away. So I think that's what happened with us in Vietnam. I felt our hands got tied, and the longer that we were there, the more they tied our hands.
Question is what I guess is in my mind that didn't make it into the citation and all of that. And I would respond that although it may signify, it does not say that I did my job. And that's what my job was. I was a combat medic, medical aid man. When my guys got hurt, I was supposed to go. Regardless of the circumstances, I was supposed to go. They expected me to go. I know my daddy expected me to go, because he was the one that imparted into me to do your job. Do the best that you can do, and that constitutes doing your job. Now, that's what I would say that's not in there, is that I did my job.
I think Clarence is absolutely right. You know, a citation is written to kind of shorten and summarize an action that happened. If it's a classified action, of course, some of that stuff's going to be left out, and it's going to be even more shortened. But you know, what was in the citation, and I don't know that I'd want to put anything other in there, because I mean it's personally satisfactory. I mean, it's suitable to explain a 3-day operation, I guess, but that's the citation to me, and I think, like, I know Mike and Clarence feel the same way. We don't feel like we deserve the honor we were bestowed. We do wear it, I guess we're temporary custodians of it. And we wear it for all those that never came back, and for those that were never recognized. And yeah, there's no way you're going to put that into a citation. So you know, we are thankful for all those people that have served and continue to serve today, and particularly the Vietnam vets that are here. Thank you so much for doing the job that you did while you were there.
So, given that you've all come here tonight, I'm going to presume that not only are you interested in remembering this crucial part of our nation's history, but also, at least in some portion, interested in Ken Burns's representation of it. And it's striking when watching those clips, and not so much watching the clips, but listening to the reaction of the audience. There's a different reaction for this film than when, say, the Civil War film is portrayed, honestly, because I think there's nobody around from the Civil War that remembers that. What we hear tonight from those clips are, frankly, a lot of sighs. Not so much laments, but people who are just overcome with emotion in many ways, but also overcome with the idea that perhaps, as the film said, the government was not necessarily telling them the full story, or as you pointed out, sir, giving them the full opportunity in the field to do what they wanted. And I'm curious how what your reaction is when you see these clips, and what your reaction is when people tell you their thoughts about the war.
I'm from the mountains of South Carolina. My father, as we all say, my father was a sixth grade education. He was my greatest mentor, my greatest hero, my greatest everything. And but when we came back, I felt when I came home, I was a hero. You know, as Tommy says, none of us think we deserve the medal, never will think we deserve the medal. Now, Tommy thinks I deserve my medal because I got
It's particularly good.
But you know, like I say, you come back, and I'd watch it on TV because it was brought in the living room. Now, did I agree with everything Walter Cronkite was saying? No, I didn't. I was ordered to take two CBS crews out one time on an operation, and I was trying to take them somewhere safe because I sure didn't want to be the guy that got the CBS crew killed. Well, we got in a firefight, and they were running, and I was running, and everybody else running, because we were always, oh man, because we'd work in very, very small units, you know. And guy dropped his camera, and I just kept running. I just stepped on the camera and kept running. And said, "Where's my camera?" I said, "You dropped it. I ain't going back for it," you know. But you know, I felt for our veterans. I felt how they came back, and I'd see so many of them being protested on, and in the airports and stuff like that. And I felt that they were mistreated all the way around. But like I said, when I went home in the mountains of South Carolina, everybody treated us like heroes. They loved their men, you know. In different parts of the country is different, you know. I mean, it's like the great state of Texas. I mean, they treat everybody great here and stuff like that. Now, if I was in Chicago, I might have been a little bit different up there, or even Berkeley. I mean, you know, so I mean, yeah. So, but you can see the difference, like you just said. There aren't a whole lot of TV sets during the Civil War, but you know that was the greatest loss of life ever in the history of America. So you got it, buddy.
Oh, please. Well, I understand the film and what it's showing, but I don't know that the lies or the misrepresentations, I guess we should call it, would have meant anything to me then. I was under a penalty to either come or face the consequences. And to me, that was simply it. Either go or face the consequences. I felt then, and I still feel now, that if you want to benefit from a situation, you've got to participate in that situation. Meaning that if I call myself an American, then I got to do the things that Americans do, and that's obey the laws. That's the way I looked at it then. I don't know that it would have made any difference. I know that the guys over there probably needed me, At least I felt that my job was as a medical aid man, that I was needed, was necessary. From that point on, I think that's all that mattered to me at that point in time. I don't know that it would be different now.
Sir.
First thing I want to say, did you notice Ken's Burns was wearing the same tie I've got on? Got awful good taste in clothing.
Well played. Well played.
You know, it's interesting to see the people he's interviewed regarding this, and I'm going to be particularly interested in seeing what his feeling for the outcome of, you know, at the end of this series. I've only seen one section of it, so I can't really speak about it other than that, but I'm kind of going to be interested to see how he ties it up and what his overall opinion was. As far as whether things were handled or things we didn't hear about or know about what the administration was doing, didn't affect me one bit. I think all of us, we were sent to do a job. That's what we looked at. That's the only thing that we were concerned with, that and keeping our people safe. I knew back from my very first tour that a lot of the intelligence that was being gathered and being sent back to, and even early on before my time, was not being reacted on according to the intelligence that was coming in, because that's not what was wanted to be. That's not what the higher-ups wanted to hear. They wanted to hear we were being successful. There wasn't that much of an invasive force. That wasn't really what was happening. But that wasn't my concern when I was there. My concern was to do the job I was sent to do. However, I knew it was very evident from my first tour that if we weren't allowed to fight the war, or fight that, excuse me, it was a conflict. Goodness gracious. With the full force that we had the capability of using, then it was just a holding action. We were never going to be able to do anything more than just a holding action until we finally withdrew. That was pretty evident. But that did not prevent me from doing a job that I'm doing when I'm over there, because that was what I was sent to do. And you may ask me why I went over a second time, if that's the way I felt. Because I believed in what I was being sent to do was very worthwhile. So that's why I did. But, you know, I don't, as far as, and it's going to be interesting to see his whole series, because I like to see how it all comes out. But and I know he's interviewing both sides, and that'll be interesting as well. I had an opportunity to go to Vietnam in 2005. They were doing a documentary on the mission that I ran, and so I had a chance to see the people that were there, and communicate with them. And there was a political person that was kind of in charge of the North Vietnamese, or that whole episode when they were filming, and they had brought in 2 of the officers that were in charge of the units that I had to penetrate through. There was over 30,000 North Vietnamese units there that I had to work through, and they did not want to be there. They hated us. You could see very readily that they did. But by the time that people doing the interviews were not, you know, born or knew much about the Vietnam War, and they would ask questions, and I would answer them as to why we reacted the way we did and what the North Vietnamese were doing that caused us to do what we were doing. And by the 3rd day, these officers started asking me questions directly. Before they'd ask them through the interpreters, as if the interpreter was asking me the question. Now they're asking them directly, because they wanted to hear the response that I had. And by the time we left, at the end of that week, one of them invited us over to his house for lunch. Now understand that when they started out, they didn't want anything to do with us. They didn't even want to be near us. They were there because that Politico was telling them to. And the other thing he was trying to solicit from us was some sympathy or sorrow for the fact of what the United States had done. And on various occasions, they attempted that. But he certainly wasn't going to get that from me, nor the other people that were there. But I was also able to talk to some of the locals. My interpreter was obviously North Vietnamese who had lost kids, or lost some of her family by our bombing. And she came over on about the 4th day. We were down in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City now, and asked me if I could go talk to her brother. Her brother ran a restaurant dance area, and I spent probably 4 hours talking to this kid. And he was younger generation, and all he wanted to know was, what's the outside world like? You know, what's America like? What's the outside world like? And I want to know because we're not told. We don't know anything other than what we read or are told. And there's a great deal of people now from all over the world that come and visit Vietnam. And so it's opening up quite a bit. And he wanted to know, what's it like? I mean, they were, and the younger kids, for pretty much as a whole, were very open to the Americans that were there, and which is kind of neat to see in a way. But I also was able to talk to some of the people at some of their museums, and of course, as you would expect, everything there is very much how they won, and we didn't. And but some of the people that are the guides in this were RVN people, Republic of Vietnam people, who were watched over by others. And I was able to get one of them aside and ask him, and he said, I asked him how life was, and he says, not good. He says, we are monitored all the time, we're watched all the time. We don't have the freedoms that most of the North Vietnamese people have. And if this fella sees me talking to you, he's gonna want an explanation, and I'll probably get in trouble for it. So that was sad to see. But interesting to see was that the younger people there were more open. They wanted to know what the outside world was like, and of course it's much changed now than when I was there.
You know, you prefaced my next question. I remember you've all mentioned your fathers, so I'll mention mine, who also served in the Army during this time. And I went to Vietnam in 2004 as a historian. And I remember having this fascinating conversation with him where he said, you know, I can't imagine from my generation anybody going there as a tourist. That's not something we thought about when we were 18, 19, 20 years old. Tourism was not high on the Vietnam list. And I'm curious then, have either of you already mentioned, sir, but have either of you had the opportunity to go back? Do you have interest? And what do you think about the sense of the country now?
Well, if you read everything they're doing, you look at the stock exchange, they want to be just like America. I mean, they're a thriving country over there right now. I just want to go back one thing about this thing you were asking about this. You know, there was a lot of good things done in Vietnam. I mean, I lived with the Vietnamese almost all my tours over there, and we took care of their families. We medically wise. I had one time I had the Kit Carson Scouts. The Kit Carson Scouts are ex-NVA and VC. I took care of them like they were my own. I got them uniforms, I got them food, I bring in medics like Clarence, they did twice a week, we take care of those like that. I helped adopt families, stuff like that.
Orphanages, we set up orphanages.
We set up orphanages, we did a lot of stuff over there, but you don't see none of that on there. It's just about, you know, the bad things, you know. And like I say, war is bad, you know, but there's a lot of good things, you know. And when we left that country, we've put money into that country now today, you know, because we'd like to see them strive to be a better country and a better world for everybody. But you know, it's like all the LD and Vietnamese SEALs, we stayed in SEAL Team 1 until we got every one of those guys back out alive. I sponsored actually 2 of the SEALs that were with Tommy and I. One's a fisherman up in Washington State. The other one taught school for 20 years in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in a community college. So, you know, we don't give up on them. And the NVA, I have no bad feelings against them. They were doing their job that they were asked to do We were doing our job that we were asked to do. And if you listen to what Clarence says and Tommy, it was taking care of each other, taking care of our other veterans out here in this thing. And that's what usually war is about. You know, it's not the politics, it's not that. We know that we're looking for support. And I don't see that from what Mr. Burns' thing is. He doesn't talk about anything, the good things that we did over in Vietnam. I'll let you go at that.
Sir, did you want to?
I haven't been back. I really hold no desire to go back, not for any other reason other than this, just that was a passing part of my life. I wish them well. As Mike say, I understand that they were doing what they were told to do as well as I was doing what I was told to do. But as for having been back in the country since then, no, I haven't. But I have mixed emotions about whether I would go back now. I probably would because of the Medal of Honor, but I don't really hold any desire to go back for no scurrilous reason or any other reason other than it's just not at that point in my life now.
Well, we have some time for some questions from you at this point. We do have some microphones I believe are going to be coming down. And if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, and if you have a question to ask or standing up, and we'll get some microphones. I see a gentleman down here in the front. If you wouldn't mind waiting for the microphone just so that everybody can hear you.
I've read your book about you and Mike's experience in Vietnam, and there's one thing that I find extremely interesting about you, Tommy. In talking with people that know you, fear is not part of one of your emotions. And I remember when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I guess I misbehaved at church. My dad said, "You're going to get a spanking when you come home." And I've known fear ever since then. I think it's totally fascinating that, and I'm not sure it's good or bad in a combat situation, but fear is not part of your makeup. And when did you find out that you didn't possess it?
Jimmy, I don't know if it was fear of him or stupidity.
You know, I don't think you have time for it in combat. You just don't.
Yeah.
You set that aside. You can't afford to, because if you do, you won't operate the next day. You kind of just push that aside. There is times after ops when you come back and you're trying to review, you know, what you should have done differently or whatever. You kind of go, "Good Lord, we made it out of that one, didn't we?" Whew! But you don't really think on it, and you can't. You know, I think, you know, people say fear is you know, a part of life and a good thing, and I'm sure that may be true, but you can't let it defeat you. And sometimes that's what fear does to people. They're so afraid that they can't finish or complete something that they don't really aggressively attack it. And I was just brought up differently. I was brought up to, you know, believe I could do whatever it is I set my mind to doing, and I don't let a whole lot of stuff get in the way. And that's kind of the way I've led my life. And I think, I mean, it certainly hasn't been detrimental to me. You know, the only thing is, if I ducked faster, I wouldn't be. Mike would have had to carry me out, but it's much better me getting shot than him. I had to pick that son of a gun up and carry him out. That'd been a load. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, please.
I don't think fear plays a part in circumstances such as what we were involved in. If it did, I don't believe you would ever do it, because you know that it's bad. It's bad out there. And if you fear something that's bad, then it'll never get accomplished. And the Medal of Honor is based on an individual doing things that most people, when you consider fear, wouldn't do.
I agree with Clarence 100%. I mean, I was 500 yards away from Tommy, and I'd already been wounded 7 times myself. And when they came back and said Tommy was dead, and they grabbed me, I said, "Stay here. I'm going back for Tommy." It wasn't the fear stopping me. It was, it was the love and the camaraderie I had for that man right there. And so I don't care if it was fear or anything else. It wasn't going to stop me going back to get him. And when I picked Tommy up, I thought he was dead. I mean, and the first round came in and blew us 25 feet. We were on top of this big bunker, blew us 25 feet off. And he landed, I saw him flying off my shoulders, and I went over and went to pick him up again. And he said, "It might, buddy," because the whole side of, so his whole left side of his head was completely gone. I mean, his brain was, you know, his skull was gone and everything. So, I don't think you never, as Tommy says, and Clarence, you never think of fear through all my tours. If you got to take that fear and turn it into something positive, something you have to do. What am I going to do? Move, move, move. Or run, run, run. It's a lot harder hit a moving target than it is this one standing there feared.
But for sure, somebody has to do something.
That's right.
Well, let me take that advice and keep moving. Another question from the audience? I think you've intimidated them.
There's one right there.
Could you share with us your experiences after the war, what you did after the military?
Sure. I guess I can start out. I spent a number of years in the hospital being getting repaired. I kept showing pictures of Robert Redford and those guys, and they went, "You don't have a chance." But after I was completed with my surgery, I became an FBI agent. I served 20 years with the FBI. An incredible career. It really was. Nothing like television and movie shows, but a lot of dedicated people working very hard to enforce the federal laws of our country. But it was a fun career. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I mean, good Lord, they gave me a car, put gas in it, let me arrest and lock up people, and they paid me to do it. I mean, jeez.
I guess. After I returned and took a couple of years to heal and everything, I did return to college. Got married, raised 3 sons, all of whom I'm very, very proud of. A couple of federal employees now, and I just I like to think I picked up what was left of my life, started a new one, and went on about my business. I am particularly proud of my sons. My wife was killed by a drunk driver, so, you know, I understand that and don't like that, but I'm particularly proud of my sons. None of them chose to go into the military. I can't say that I blame them. I wanted what they wanted.
There you go. I made a military career. I stayed in for almost 26 years, and I was one of the original 10 that started SEAL Team 6 in 1980. Of course, I did a lot of traveling with them all around, and actually, when Tommy was in the FBI, I trained him.
You certainly gave me a lot of clothes.
Yeah, I gave him a lot of good clothes, yeah, but I love the military, and when they retired me, I was kind of upset, but it was just another page in your chapter of life, and you turn that page and you move on and do something else. And I moved from South Carolina. There was a whole lot of jobs going on there, and I moved to the great state of Texas. And I said, well, I can be one of two things, a hitman for the mafia or start a small security company. So I started a small security company.
And we're proud to
Have you ever reconsidered that decision?
It's bad enough to know who your enemies are. You don't know the good guys or the bad guys that are trying to shoot you. I did, like I say, we live in the greatest country in the world. And, please don't never take that for granted.
Another question?
Do any of the vets have a question for us?
Well, that was really my question. I know you guys are still serving your country. And I know Lieutenant Thornton has a foundation and goes around all the time helping other people and other vets. And so that was kind of my question. But since you've answered that, I guess I'd like to ask this, Lieutenant Thornton. When you were pulling Lieutenant Norris out to sea, and I think also one of the Vietnamese commandos, wasn't it? Weren't you pulling two people?
Yes, sir. I was carrying Quan. He was shot through his right buttocks, and a part of his femur muscle was gone. And I had him in front of me and had Tommy on my back.
And then I assume you saw the cruiser moving away, your support, and you kept still swimming out to sea. How did you know that someone was going to be there to pick you up? And what were you thinking?
Well, we had a great young man by the name of Bill Woodruff, and we always put a seal on the insertion and extraction craft. And even though Billy said, actually the word got back, the young Vietnamese officer had left earlier, and Bill found him, and he was debriefing him, and he said Tommy was dead, and I was missing in action. And the other two Vietnamese SEALs were out there. But I had handpicked those two Vietnamese SEALs personally, and they had been in many firefights. I know little Quan says, Mike, I never work with you no more, no more. I said, why? He said, I always get shot. But I said, I always bring you back alive. He said, good thing, good thing.
Well, thank all of you for your service to your country.
Thank you, sir.
It.
Another question? I think I actually see somebody in the back who has a question.
So I'm very curious, did you suffer or did you know about PTSD then and traumatic brain injury like we hear now?
Did you all hear the question?
Yeah, it's a traumatic brain injury.
I had that.
PTSD. You're dramatic enough.
I think we all had it. After college, I went to work for the Department of Veteran Affairs, the Houston Regional Office, and I processed disability claims for the returning veterans. I was a claims examiner, all the way up to deciding disability issues. And those were considerations that we took into our decisions. PTSD was formally declared a disability within the rules of VA in the early 80s, or middle 80s, let's say. And from that point, when you say traumatic brain injuries, the Department of Veteran Affairs looked at them and called it exactly that, traumatic brain injuries. But they were a lesser version, or a greater version, let's say, of the concussion issue that we see now. And I make nothing meant. The NFL with its concussion issues should have went to the military. The military is the foremost authority on head injuries. such as what Tommy had, such as what I had when a AK round bounced off my head.
Hard-headed.
Yeah, that's what Daddy always said, I was hard-headed. But thanks for the question, and that was part of what went on during that time.
And I call it PTS. I don't put a D on it. It's a disorder. Let it become a disorder. You know, you gotta fight your demons, and we all have them in this room. I mean, something, you know, and but you have to want to help yourself so before anybody else can help you.
Well, with any issue, the body is a marvelous machine. Him that bees knew what he was doing when he put us together. If you'll give it time, ride it out, it will heal itself. And that's probably in my mind, the most profound thing I will say.
But in Tommy's case, the brain does not regrows and start growth again. So he's behind the cloud right now.
No.
To answer your question, obviously it is a very concerning issue, and we've had a number of suicides, much more than we'd ever want to think would occur within the people that served in the military. But I think, like Mike and Clarence both said, it's how you handle it. Some people can handle it easier than others, and sometimes it takes quite a while to be able to adjust and let some of those issues resolve. Some people, it may never. But at least now we recognize it, and we're taking steps to try and help those that have those problems. Sadly, we didn't see it. You know, it's been happening in every war. He's called it shell shock. But yeah, it is battle fatigue, whatever. But it is a real issue, and it's something that continually needs to be addressed.
But as Medals of Honor recipients, we're very aware of the situation, and we all have gone out to all these kids, and we've made films and stuff to say, hey, everybody has this, so don't be afraid to raise the flag. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And every one of us are wearing our uniforms or our medals around our neck, and we talk to these kids and let them know that, because we're very aware of the situation. We're going to help in any way we can. And you know, but like I say, they got to want to help themselves. They have to make that step forward.
So we have time.
I have a question.
What's that?
Speaking of talking to kids, what do you tell young men and women who ask you about serving in the military today?
I personally, Tommy, you go first.
Okay, I'll field that one. You know, there's a lot of kids that, you know, when they're particularly high school age, but we talk to kids even from elementary school on up. But you know, some of them have goals already set. They're going to go to college, or they have a life path. But there's so many that do not, and we try to encourage them to at least consider the military as an option, because what you're going to gain is going to put you miles ahead of your fellow students that don't go. It's going to give you experiences and build your character, build your ability to resolve problems, give you some responsibilities that you may not have had before, but prepare you for anything you're going to encounter later in life. So yes, we do try to encourage the young men and women in our educational system to consider that. And like we've all said, we think everyone should give back in some way to this country. It doesn't have to be the military, but at least consider that as an avenue if you really don't know what else you want to do. And I think probably all of us look at
Yes.
it in that regard.
Anything other you want?
I have always encouraged the young people that I speak with to join the military services. It offers a way out to a lot of kids that have no other way out if they'll just consider it and take it. It's a good living now. It's not like when we all went in there where it was, what was it, $90 a month?
$86.
$86 a month. It's actually a good living now. And you learn a lot that you would never have learned any other way. It puts you ahead on any job that you might fall into than anybody else that came along with you. So yeah, I do encourage it. I encourage it every day. Down where I live, I'm well known down there, and that I support the military. If you got a problem, come talk to me.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we're doing right now. You know, a lot of people are hungry to find out what goes on. We don't really teach history like we used to as we were growing up in the country. But you know, I guess I told you my father was my greatest mentor. I wasn't a bad kid growing up. I had dyslexia really bad, but I was what do you call it, Tommy? Let's say I got in a little trouble, you know. And my dad and the juvenile judge, I'm not proud to say this, but I'm not afraid to tell kids this, that the juvenile judge and my dad set up a thing, and I was going to join the armed services. And I just didn't know it yet because I knew I was 1A. And he said, Mike, what did I tell you if you came in front of me again? I got in a fight and I messed a guy up a little bit, big deal. He should never sucker punch me, but said, you said you'll send me to reform school. And he said, yep, but I don't give you make your first decision in your life. I just want you to do an about face. And I came to about face and I turned around and there were recruiters were right there. And Ned Johnson was a second class petty officer, and he was a Navy recruiter. And I turned around and I gave him a hand salute. I've always wanted to be a Navy frogman, sir, and like that. He said, go sign those papers. So my father, and he never told me about it until almost 20 years after I'd been in the Navy. So he said, and it was everything. It was my education. It was travel. It was, Daddy always said, you take care of your people will take care of you. And I still use those rules today. That's the reason my wife and I travel 262 days to help these kids that can't help themselves. And in a way of our foundation. I think that's the reason why Tommy and I write this book. I think this gentleman and why we've all been friends for 40-something years. I'm 40, almost 50 years now. So, it's that camaraderie and love for each other, and it was my parents gave me the basis. The military helped me move forward with those bases.
Well, we have time for just one more question. This gentleman, I think, is going to attack me on the way out if I don't give him the microphone.
Oh, you don't want to mess with him.
Is there a microphone coming?
I think I can speak loud enough. First, I want to direct it toward Michael. I followed your career for the last several years, and I'm so pleased. The gentleman commented on what you've been able to accomplish. And I want to talk a little bit about Tommy. The Navy, and I'm retired from the Navy, we have a scholarship program that will pay up to $200,000 a year, $2,000 for a 4-year scholarship that's available for young men that qualify to go actively primary come into the Navy. Now, I can't speak for the Air Force or the Army, but the Navy's been very active in this area. And then, Michael, I know you've participated with the SEALs of today versus your tenure. And can you give us an observation of what you see?
Yeah, I'm so very proud of those kids. They took the baton from Tommy and I, but it's not just the Navy SEALs, it's all the armed services. These kids are so bright, so brilliant. I mean, they're talented. You know, they're not drafted. They come in the military because they want to do something for this country. They have that positive attitude. And I tell you, they're a lot smarter than I was ever. And Clarence and Tommy both, because these kids, what they have to do and learn, just with all the electronics and stuff. I mean, my granddaughter's put my apps on my phone, or my beautiful wife, because I haven't figured it out yet. Can you hear me now is all I know I want to hear. You know, but...
We'd have been happy with a GPS and a cell phone.
Yeah, in Vietnam, I'd have loved to have a GPS and cell phone, because I'm very proud of our American. I travel all over the country, and I talk to the military. I mean, I'm down at Fort Bliss, Killeen. I'm out with all the SEAL teams all around, you know, and I'm very proud of the Navy SEAL Team 6. I just say, you know, you keep a low key. You have a responsibility. You don't need to be talking about your operations. You don't need to be writing books. I mean, and myself and our good friend Eric Olson, we've traveled around to try to talk to these young SEALs, you know. Don't give away secrets. I mean, we never did. We never talked about our operations until they had been declassified after 25 years. And there are still classified stuff on some of the things that I did. But, you know, but I am so proud of our military. They're the best. They're the best in the world right now.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you, but before doing that, 2 pieces of housekeeping. The first is, if you would like to hear more and learn more about some of these stories, this book written by these gentlemen is for sale, as well as another one by a Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation, which I believe also goes to their charity. So if you have the opportunity on your way out, please think of picking up one or both of those books. And then also, if you are so inclined, our Center for Presidential History is in the business of recording history, recording memories, and in particular recording what people think about history. So we have some cameras set up outside. If you want to sit down and give your thoughts to the camera for 3 or 4 minutes of what you remember about Vietnam or what you want subsequent generations to learn about Vietnam, we'd love to hear them, and we put them in the archive for future researchers and for our students to use. So if you want to be memorialized that way, that's a great way. So if you would, please, join me in thanking these gentlemen. And gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your service.